Hey, thanks for joining me. This week I got to sit down with Caleb Copeland of Copeland Creative. Caleb is and his company is one of the busiest and most successful outdoor content creation companies in the space, whether it's on social media, for advertising, for websites. Caleb lives in Georgia, has a background in hunting from the time he was 18 months old, tagging along with his dad. Does stuff for a lot of different companies, but he's really well known in the hunting space. He's done work for John Dudley over at Nock On Archery. He's done work for Black Rifle Coffee Company. We talked about a lot of different things. If you're into filming, if you want to get started into self-filming, or if you want to get started into the creative industry in the outdoor space, this is a great podcast for you. And then we just spent a lot of time talking about the do's and don'ts that he's learned from being around some of the best hunters in the country. We kind of did at the beginning of the podcast, we do a top 3 things that he's learned from being around, some of the best, both deer hunters, elk hunters, turkey hunters in the country. And then towards the end of the podcast, we talk about the top 3 don'ts, things to avoid to make yourself successful. Covered a wide range of topics. This is a great episode. You're not going to want to miss it. I appreciate you being here. I know that you've got a lot of things to do with your time, and it's very important to me that you're here. Thank you so much. If you can just take a couple of seconds, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Our video podcast is both on Spotify as well as YouTube, but give us a subscribe over on YouTube as well. That's a big deal for us as we're just starting to grow this channel. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you being here. Enjoy the episode with Caleb. All right, Caleb Copeland, welcome to the podcast, brother. Appreciate you being here, man.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you having me.
So Caleb, if just give us a real quick intro, but obviously you and I met at Winter Strong last year. You've got one of the busiest. I don't want you want to call yourself a creative agency or a filmmaker? How would you put the moniker in place?
We're kind of a media company agency. We specialize in video production in the outdoor space. We do some sports stuff, some stuff for the local college, some construction stuff, but our main business is in the outdoors, producing content for YouTube, for television, for social media, long form, short form, and everything in between. I tell people if it's got to do with media and content, we can do it.
And so what are some of the bigger brands that you've worked with, or some of the more recognizable brands that people would know?
Black Rifle Coffee Company, John Dudley with Nock On, the Crush for Lee and Tiffany, Bass Pro Shops. We've done work and are continuing to do work with several of those brands.
Yeah, so you work with a lot of heavy hitters. So I'm going to throw you one right out of the gate that has nothing to do with film.
Okay.
But I think people will find it interesting. So you're out in the field with tons of people. Obviously, we were kind of trying to line this thing up, and you're like, hey, I'm going to Oklahoma Monday. What are, if you were going to list top 3 things in terms of having been with a lot of different people who are very experienced in the hunting space, the top 3 things that you've learned or that you see people do that make the biggest difference in being successful versus, the average person who's going out there really, struggling?
The number one thing to be successful on the hunting side is absolutely being completely and utterly obsessed. One of the clients that we work with right now is called Seek One. It's the largest hunting YouTube channel.
With those guys?
Yeah. We're producing a lot of their episodes.
Okay.
And Lee, one of the main guys, he doesn't love it. He's not obsessed with it. He has an absolute affliction that doesn't allow him to do anything halfway when it comes to trying to hunt a big deer, to the point to where he's even made comments in his early 30s to us. He's like, man, I don't know how much longer I can do this, because it wears on him so much mentally and physically. I mean, just this deer that he just killed in Ohio recently, I honestly don't even know the amount of trips that he made up there, but he would get a picture of a deer in Ohio. He would literally get in the truck, no matter what time he got the picture, and go.
Has he got a family?
He's got a fiance.
Okay.
And when me and him have had that conversation about when you finally get married and you have some youngins, that might change some things.
Yeah.
But that is the only way you can be that successful, is you have to be just consumed with it. I love to hunt. I love to play baseball. It was really the only two things I ever really loved to do growing up. And I wanted to have a job in one of those two. But like, I love it. I don't have that affliction. I enjoy doing other things to where I can say no and I can push things away. But that guy doesn't have it. Like he's not capable of not chasing that deer or not figuring out a way to get it done. And I was actually messaging Tyler Jordan from Real Tree last night on Instagram. He said that guy will go down in history as one of the greatest killers of all time, which a little teaser for people that watch this. We're working on that Ohio episode right now. And the very beginning of that episode, we actually have kind of done as if you've ever seen Night Stalker on Netflix, it's going to be like a serial killer documentary because
really?
That's what he is.
That's a cool.
And so it's gonna play like a serial killer documentary, and it's really cool.
So how do you well, to back up, I think to piggyback on the point you just made, which is I think is really good, right? I was in Missouri for 5 days last week, and it was on a new piece of property that I hadn't hunted before. It took me a few days to kind of get my bearings around it. I had some smaller, bucks come in. The very last night, I had a nice size 10 point that I kind of figured out where they finally were. Last light, like ran out of time on him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my wife was sick, and it probably could have stayed another day or two, but she was feeling terrible, and we were at a relative's house, and so I was like, okay, like the right thing to do is pack up and go home, and get her home. But like the afflicted guy would have been like, I'm on this thing. Mm-hmm. I'm out there the next morning. Right. And I think you're right. Like that kind of in the back, like I'm balancing that whole, like, I know I did the right thing for my family, but in terms of my ability to harvest that animal, I didn't do what I should have done. Right.
Yeah. But at the same time too, he doesn't necessarily have that obligation yet.
Right. That's what I'm saying. He's got the ability to do that.
And I think, that's the big differentiator is he has the ability to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the really hard thing for a lot of guys, especially, even in my business where we film a lot of hunts. I mean, I have me and 4 other guys. So there's 5 of us total in the office that, work full time doing this. And, we're gone average 150-ish days a year each.
Jeez, that's a lot.
Filming hunts or filming something all over the place. Last time I kept up with it, I can't remember what year it was. It was 1 or 2 years ago. We were in 22 states and 3 countries filming hunts, and that's a lot. But at the same time, we have other clients, we have other obligations. I have a family. One of my other guys is married, or 2 of my other guys are married. And, we have things, and it's really hard for me to do that many days anymore because I've got 3 kids and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That are, of the age where they're into everything.
Yeah. So you want to be home for that stuff.
Yeah. And I do miss stuff. Like this was the first year that I've been home for my anniversary in 13 years. So it was one of those things to where it definitely, obviously it's my job and I get paid to do it, which Lee does now, but before he was making money doing it, he didn't. He was having to work a full-time job and then figure out a way to do this too.
That's the other thing is most people, they're doing that, right? Most people aren't getting paid or making their living killing deer. So add the affliction on top of the fact that he's doing that full time.
But that's a really hard thing for a lot of, young guys now that, when we look to hire freelance guys or editors or, somebody in-house or, anything, I can't tell you, I wish I'd have kept up with it. How many guys reach out to say, I wish I would have done that before I had, wife and kids, or I have this job now that I can't leave because I have benefits and 401k that I can't walk away from that I don't enjoy, but I can't walk away from it now because of the obligations that I have. And I feel for guys like that because because I tell everybody there's only 1 or 2 people have a better job than me. I absolutely love what I do. And I love the people that I know and the people I get to work with, even in the office and the clients that we have. But, I got into this before I had kids. I was married. My wife wasn't a huge fan of what I was getting into, but she's learned to live with it now. But it's one of those things to where I am trying to make this better, and guys are trying to better their life, but they can't do it because they are already in a place where they can't do anything.
I coached college football for 10 years and it was when I was single, and then the back end, I was married for a few years, but we were working 80, 90 hours a week. But it didn't matter because that's what I wanted to do. I slept at the stadium. It was like, that was my entire thing. That was my passion. That's all I wanted to do. And that's what you can do when you have that kind of time. So jumping off from there, let's say the affliction is number one. What are two and like a couple other ones that the average Joe could implement, right? That you see a lot of these guys do, or a lot of these guys do that a lot of other people don't do, that are implementable, by a person who's got a job and got a family.
It takes money to make money. Unfortunately, there's no way to do some of this stuff without spending money. And I know that's a really hard thing. Like even if you look at what Seek One does, they might not be paying for the places that they hunt, but they're spending a fortune in corn, cameras, fuel, time. There's just no way around it. Not just the affliction part, but the time and the money investment. It has to be there. And especially if you want to do it on like the Western side or the whitetail side, that takes the most time and the most money. So there's no way around that. And I guess the last thing would be, having a good team around you and having people that you can trust and rely on. This is something that's really nearly impossible to do on your own. To do it well on your own. Dudley's one of those few guys that does really well on his own, that we help him with a lot of media. But a lot of guys have people either behind the scenes or with them in the shows or series that make it to where it is possible.
And what are they doing to make it easier for the hunter that make those things so much simpler? They just,
whether it's a guide, whether it's a buddy to be traveling with, that guy behind the camera, whatever the case may be, being able to work as a team and work as a unit to where you can, especially when you're talking about like Western hunts or turkey hunts, like those are always better as a team. Like doing that solo, unless you're hunting a private ranch, is very, very, very tough.
Yeah, I figured that one out. I went out and did my first elk hunt and I did it, solo. And it was, you're right, it was rough. I had a buddy that was in there for a couple of days who came out with me on a couple of different, afternoons and called for me and stuff like that. And that was, even though we didn't call anything in, just functionally, it made a lot more sense. And it was a lot, it seemed like it could be a lot more efficient. So,
yeah. Well, that and toting meat out, that always makes it better when you have help.
But I've never really thought about that from a whitetail perspective, I've always just kind of done it on my own. I've never really,
whitetails, you can do it on your own, but especially on the intel side, having someone to help you in multiple states. Like if you're hunting around the house, you can do that by yourself. But if you're hunting 4, 5, 6 states and you don't have somebody to help you with cameras, help you with feed, help you with intelligence, help you with, where this is, the good, the bad, the ugly of the spot, the area, whatever the case may be. When you're doing it at that level, you have to have help.
I think that's a great point because last year, so I just started hunting in the last couple of years because I was on a football field forever in the fall. But like last year, I went to my relatives, my cousin's place in Southern Illinois. They've got 9 tree stands already set up on the property. He knew like, okay, this is how you hunt each one with a wind. This is where I've seen deer, blah, blah, blah. Second day, third sit, I kill a really nice 8-point. And I hadn't been up there for a day and a half. But like you said, he kind of put me on everything. I go up to Missouri this year, probably the property's just as good. It's bigger. It's on really good ag land. but I didn't really have anyone to point me in the right direction because it was no one hunts that property. It's just
Mhm.
it's owned by an older relative, and it took me a long time just to start to get my bearings around it. So I think
Yeah.
that's a really really good point.
Yeah, unless you have some of that history, or like you said, that boots on the ground knowledge, going in blind to a new property, even for an experienced hunter, man, it takes a little while. Like, I can't remember the saying, but it's like if you've got 10 days to hunt, spend 7 of them scouting.
hmm Yeah, I think that's probably a mistake that I made because I had gone and scouted it the previous summer, um, and I probably should have spent a couple days doing that, even though I had thought I had already done it.
Mhm.
But I just kind of jumped into some spots that I thought were good. I got some younger bucks that came in, and I kind of figured, oh, I'm in the right spot, and it just didn't pan out the way I thought it was going to, and it took a little while. So I think that's a really good point. You're not just a filmer, but you've hunted for a long, long time. You had a really successful hunt in Kansas this year, right?
Yeah, what was it? I killed him on the 16th, so 4 days ago,
Oh, geez, that
Saturday.
was. Talk to me. Tell me a little bit about that because I've always found that interesting. This was my first year hunting out west. I've hunted on the East Coast, Illinois, Missouri, that kind of thing. But Kansas is a whole different ball game. Have you been doing that for a while?
I've been hunting Kansas on and off for whitetails for 6 years now, and I've turkey hunted it for at least that many years. Yes. Kansas. Kansas is kind of its own animal. Um, in
Oh, ground
terms,
hunting.
do what?
Were you ground hunting the whole time?
No, I was in a tree
You
stand.
were okay.
I killed my deer 2 years ago off the ground, but that was kind of a fluke. But this year I hunted out of a tree stand the whole time.
Gotcha. Was this a deer that you like? Do you run cameras up there? Had you identified something already, or what
No,
was the situation?
this is that helper thing. This is a buddy of
Okay.
mine that owns an outfitting business that I don't have the time to be able to go out like a Lee or like a Dudley and have a property that I can spend time on, go out in the summer, hang cameras and put feed out and all that stuff. So he's a friend of mine named Caleb Shanky. He owns K&S Outfitters, and anytime I draw a tag in Kansas, I go with him because he's kind of for guys like me that don't have the time, he's the easy button. He's the one that has the places set up, and you've got to be the hunter and you've got to get it done for yourself. But he puts you in the best spot he can and gives you the intel, shows you the deer, and then wishes you the best of luck. It's kind of a half guided, half DIY. When I do it, it's a little more DIY because he knows, he's known me for years and trusts me. So he'll essentially give me a farm or an area and see, like, here's a stand. But if you see something you want to do to move around, go for it. Which we have in the past. I didn't this year. And Kansas is unique because generally the deer are so aggressive, like Texas and Kansas, Oklahoma generally, and then some areas in the Midwest. I wouldn't say they're as aggressive, but like Kansas and Texas and Oklahoma, something about that center of the country, the deer just get crazy aggressive and they just want to fight. And that's one of the big things about that late in the rut in Kansas. If you don't get there that first week, if the weather's good, which is, I didn't go the first week because the weather wasn't good, and we had scheduling issues with some other clients that I was trying to essentially go from Kansas to Missouri to Oklahoma, and then the Missouri one got jacked up, which jacked them all up. So now I came back home. Then I turned back around and go to Oklahoma. But anyway, if you don't get there to hunt them that first week in November when the rut first starts really kicking, by that second week, most of the bucks, the big bucks anyway, have been fighting so much they break points off. And some people don't like that. They don't like shooting deer with broken points. I don't care.
hmm
The deer that I killed had 2 broken points, a broken G2 and a broken brow tine, which to me meant he's a fighter and he's aggressive. And that's one of the few places where you can go in and rattle in a good area, and you can usually rattle in a couple deer. Generally, they're going to be younger, 2-3 years old, but you get one in the right mood, which I missed one the day before I killed. I saw a small buck behind me, and I just grunted to him. I didn't rattle at him. And from 200 yards, man, he walked right to the base of my tree, raking a tree at 25 yards right behind me. And I'm just standing there in the tree watching the show, and I swore I heard a grunt to my left. And I look around and didn't see anything, and go back to watching that little little 3-year-old 7-pointer raking a tree. And then I turn and look again just to kind of scan. And here comes a freaking, looks like a 4x8 sheet of plywood walking through the woods. And, and I have to get turned all the way around because I'm left-handed. And by the time I get all the way turned around, he's already through my first lane. Mm-hmm. And he's going into my second lane. I range it, and I had to stop him, because he's got his ears laid back. He's bristled up. He's coming to that little 7-pointer, and he's going to beat his butt. And he is on a string going to him. He has no idea I'm in the world. But in order for me to get a shot, the last spot I had was that 36-yard hole, and I had to stop him. Well, when I stop him, that obviously alerts him. And you talk to somebody like Dudley, you never stop a deer, which I would have had to shoot him walking at 36 yards, which I didn't want to do either. So when I stopped him, he's, now he's alerted to my general direction. And when I shot, he reacted to my shot and dropped out of the stratosphere. He didn't know a 4x8 sheet of plywood could move that fast, and shot over him. And then, that little 7-pointer obviously didn't know what was going on. He just eventually left. So it was a missed opportunity for me, but it all happened really fast versus the day that I killed that deer. He's coming in chasing a doe, and he wasn't going to leave her. And that doe just finally worked her way around me to where he got to where he could get in a position where I could shoot him at 21 yards and out of the same spot. So it worked out really, really well. But just shows you how quick things can change, because up to that point, I hadn't seen much at all. Like, the deer had been on lockdown. Hadn't seen a mature deer yet. And then in the span of 2 days, I see 2. So
how many days were you there?
I think I hunted for 8 or 9 days, I think.
Okay. So it was slow for a week, and then all of a sudden it kind of broke loose.
Yeah. Now, the deer I missed was the first mature deer I saw, but there were several other guys hunting, because Caleb's got 30 something thousand acres that he either owns or leases. And there, a lot of other guys that killed in camp. And I was seeing deer. I just wasn't seeing anything that I would want to shoot that I'd be happy with that was mature. But it can change in an instant. You just gotta, the secret to whitetail hunting is time in the seat. You have to be there. You can't kill them any other way.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's the hard one for so many of us that work a ton. And, it's like, you'll take 5 days off or whatever. And, I sit there and think, okay, I went to Missouri for 5 days. I kind of was starting to get into it, and then talk to somebody like you, and you were like, yeah, I was there for 8 or 9 days. You were there for 7, didn't see anything or much of anything, right, that you would shoot. And then all of a sudden it breaks loose. And so, like you said, sometimes it's just, you got to have enough time. Well, it's not that you're doing something wrong. It's just that you're not out there enough.
Yeah. Well, speaking of time, like, Clay just walked in next door. When we were doing Lee and Tiff, he sat with Lee for 51 straight days. Something like that, between elk and whitetails. I think he sat from October 1st till like first or second week in November. And they had 3 encounters with the deer that, so it's so funny. And this is how it always happens in our businesses. You spend so much time hunting a deer with somebody. You've had 3 encounters. You've told the whole story with the camera, all the encounters, all the planning, all the trail cam pictures, the whole fall you filmed. And then Clay, it was his time to go home. He gets in the truck to start driving back to Georgia from Iowa to get, a week off before he goes right back to do it again. And the guy that comes in behind him to films Lee kill that deer. His truck tires haven't even got hot on the highway yet. And Lee's already killed that deer that they've been sitting for 50 something days. And he calls Clay on the road, and it's so funny. Like, Clay joked, like, every episode that Lee has a kill in, I filmed everything but the kill, because he's like, he put in all the work and all the time in the seat. And then the one thing that you want to get is the producer's the kill shot. He wasn't there for, but that's just how it goes.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet you even though he's not the one hunting, he's been there on every sit. He's filmed every bit of it. So he's just as invested as Lee is on the whole thing.
Oh yeah. That's, we all are, I wish I knew the amount of animals that I've been a part of that, deer, elk, turkeys, aoudad, mule deer that I filmed over the years that, that I was as much a part of that hunt as the guy with the gun or the bow. I just don't have the taxidermy bill at the end of it. I've got an awesome picture to remember it by, and video I can watch as long as the grid don't go down, I can watch forever. So it's really cool to be a part of it, and it's really cool to share those experiences and the places we've got to see, the places we've got to hunt. I mean, I've got to hunt the best ground in the world for everything, whitetails, turkeys, elk. I've got to hunt the best of the best. It doesn't get any better. You can't go to a better place than I've been. And not a lot of people can say that, but Ryer, one of my other guys, he said it better than I've ever heard it. He said that camera that we carry is a ticket to all the cool stuff. And it is. I mean, the amount of stuff that we've gotten to do just because we knew how to run a camera and we are good dudes and we do our job is incredible.
So how did you get into, I mean, obviously you knew you wanted to do, but just in terms of developing the expertise around the skill set around the camera, the skill set around the creative side, what was the learning curve and the arc to that in terms of, was that something that you liked to do when you were young, or was that something that you were like, okay, I'm trying to figure out a way how to be in this industry. I want to go learn how to do that because I'm interested in it. Well,
I graduated college during the housing crisis when there were very few jobs. And, I just graduated college with a business degree because I got a business degree because I had no idea what I wanted to do.
Where'd you go to school?
University of North Georgia, right here in town.
Okay.
I played baseball there my sophomore through senior year, and I went to a junior college my freshman year to play baseball. But I grew up hunting and playing baseball. It was the only two things I ever really loved. I never partied, never drank, never did anything like that. It was baseball or hunting. And I wanted to have a job in one of those things. And, when obviously playing college baseball, there was always the hope of something more, but I was physically capable of everything, but mentally I was not. I was a mental head case a lot of times in baseball, which baseball is played 70% in your head. So that was my big limiting factor. But,
what position did you play?
I was a pitcher.
Oh yeah, you don't want to be a head case as a pitcher.
Yeah, I was a pitcher in college, and I played first base in high school, which I wish I would have never given up playing first base. I liked it more.
That's what I played.
I liked pitching. I didn't love pitching. I loved playing first base. I loved hitting and playing first base.
Yeah, I think like you said too, you have to love whatever you're doing. Doesn't matter whether it's a job or a sport or whatever. If you don't love it, you're not going to be great at it.
Well, I was 6'3" left-handed, so obviously they were going to put me in a pitching role at some point.
Right.
And I started pitching, I don't know, at like 12, 13, something like that. And I was always just natural ability. I never really had much like real coaching until I got into like 17, 18-year-old travel ball. And I look back on it in terms of the coaching I had, we never worked on the mental aspect of baseball, which I don't understand when that game is played so much in your head. Now that I sit back and I watch baseball, now that I'm out of it, I see all the mistakes that I made, and I see all the things that I could have done better, and my mental approach. Physically, I was capable of everything. But my mental approach was terrible. I never did the things that I needed to do to get prepared between my ears to be able to go out there and compete and to throw strikes and to, I like, what, love him or hate him, I watch a lot of Trevor Bauer and how he approaches things and how he breaks down hitters and at bats. And I never did that. I just got up there and just freaking threw it. And that works for some people, and it worked for me a lot. But for me to know, like, it worked for me a lot doing that, if I would have had a little bit better mental approach, what it would have, how that would have changed my trajectory, you'll never know. But I can't complain. I mean, I got a killer job now that, honestly kind of came out of nowhere a little bit. I was in college, and I was reading a Field and Stream magazine, and they had an ad in there for a thing called Generation Wild. And what they wanted kids under the age of 18 to sign up to win this contest. And it was essentially to try and get ambassadors for the next generation of hunters, because back then hunting numbers were down tremendously, which they're supposedly still down. It's a whole nother debate for a whole nother day.
Doesn't feel like it, does it?
I don't know if I agree with that or not. But anyway, back then they were. The generational tradition of hunting was really starting to die in the early 2000s. And, this would have been 2007, ish, I think. Well, I can't sign up for this thing because I'm 20, 21 at the time. I'm in junior in college. So I sign my brother up, who's 17. I write the article. I send in the pictures. I do the whole thing. And lo and behold, he wins. He's one of the 4 kids that wins it. He had no idea I signed him up. He thought it was a prank call when he got a call from Field and Stream magazine. So by winning this, he got to go turkey hunt with Realtree. He got to, do some videos for their website. He got to tour Realtree farms. He got to be on a TV show, and I got to go along with him on a lot of the stuff when I had time. So I got to see what it looks like to make a TV show, what it looks like to film a hunt, what it looks like to do all these things. And then in addition to that, they wanted him to do these videos for the website. Well, I wanted his to be better than the other kids. Like, I wanted him to stand out. So like, I produced them, and I had no idea what I was doing. I would film him when all the other kids were just essentially like doing selfie videos with their little handy cams that they sent them. This was, before like iPhones.
Yeah. At this point, what you were filming on, was stuff digital at this point?
The big cameras were not. No,
so you had to film it on film
tape cameras. Yeah, the mini DV tapes.
Mm-hmm.
This is, those were not even HD. These were still 4:3 square video. But anyway, I would produce his little videos, and like we would cut 2 angles together, and I would edit them in iMovie on my iMac at school. And I essentially just kind of pulled it in and like figured it out. They were terrible. I wouldn't show them to a single soul now because of how bad they were. But that, him going the extra mile for Field and Stream essentially made it to where they're like, hey, when your 1 year's over, we want you to stay on to do some more stuff because you kind of went above and beyond. And my brother looked at him and goes, I didn't do any of that. My brother did. He made me do it all. And which I did. My brother didn't want to do anything. He just wanted to hunt.
Yeah.
And my brother didn't play sports in high school. He rode his motorcycle and hunted. Like, that's it. That's all he wanted to do. Like, my brother is like, he was the guy until he had kids that was like Lee. Like, that was it. That's all he wanted to do. And I was the same, but I played baseball, and I played baseball in college. I played, that's all I did my whole life was play baseball and go to church and hunt. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Josh didn't even have the baseball thing. He just hunted and went to church. So, the camera was an annoyance to him. And me and him had some of our biggest like fights because of the camera. When I would want him to kind of do more and do this and do that, he's like, no, I just want to hunt. I don't want to mess with any of that. But anyway, so Field and Stream asked me to produce a web show for them because my brother told him I did everything. I produced a web show for them. Terrible. I had no idea what I was doing, but they paid me $5,000. Never forget it. I took half of that money, and I'm rich because I'm in college, and I just got paid $5,000 to go.
Oh yeah, $5,000 in college? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, to film my brother shoot does. I'm like, heck yeah, like let's do this. I took half of that money, went and bought my first HD camera from a lady off Craigslist from a Caribou Coffee for $2,500. I'll never forget it. And then I just, for the next year, or next 2.5 years when I got out of college, I would just go film whoever would let me go. I'm like, I didn't hunt for like over 2 years. I'm like, let me just go with you, learn, meet people, network, and do all that. And this is after college. I'm working in IT.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how are you paying the bills right now?
Well, I get married very quickly out of college. And then I worked in IT for 2.5 years. And when I say IT, don't think like network systems. Like, I was scanning like computer viruses off old ladies' computers. Like, that's what I was doing. Very, very basic stuff. I've always been fairly computer savvy. And I was doing stuff that like, most people that know how to run a computer can do. I was, fixing ladies' Outlooks because they got into their Outlook settings and started jacking with stuff and messed stuff up. And I'd go and fix their Outlook and like simple stuff. And I was making no money, but I was married, living in a 1-bedroom apartment with my wife, and we didn't really need a lot of money.
Were you doing your own thing, or were you working for somebody else for like one of these?
I was working for somebody else.
PC repair shop or something like that.
I was working for someone else. My aunt owned a pretty large company, and the IT firm that did her IT was looking for some help, and I essentially was the help. And I wasn't very good help, but I needed a job, and there was nothing then, and I didn't make any money.
So you're tagging along on the weekends with these other guys, working during the week and then on the weekends?
every evening after work, every weekend, I'm going with somebody. And I just tried to figure out who and what to do in terms of like who to go with, what to do, trying to learn the camera, learn the ins and outs of editing. And, you know, and I went and sat with a guy who did some church media for a big church here in the Atlanta area to try and learn how to run this. This was in the Final Cut Pro 7 days, not even in the Adobe Premiere like we're in now. I sat with him for 2 days and he essentially showed me the keyboard shortcuts and how to import footage. And then I'm like, that's it. And he's like, yeah, you can figure out the rest. And I'm like, dude. And I remember the first time he opened Final Cut, I thought I was looking at the human brain. I'm like, there's no chance I'm ever going to figure this out. But I really wanted to do it. And I like in that web series I did for Field and Stream, I'm like, there's actually money to be made with this, because if I could do, I'm looking at that. I was like, if I could do, if I did 5 videos for them for $5,000, I do 50 a year. That's $50,000. Like that's double what I'm making right now. And I get to have fun doing it. So that was kind of my like mentality. Well, in that 2.5 years, I had an idea for a show, a hunting show. I was watching like Swamp People or Swamp Vloggers one day. And I took that idea and I put it in like a really well written email. And I sent it to Jeff Foxworthy, the comedian, because I knew he had done a bunch of hunting stuff. And I had his personal email that I got from a friend of a friend who like swore me to secrecy not to give it to anybody. And I was like, okay, well, I sent him the email. And within 2 days, I get a reply back. And he says, I love this idea. Do you care if I pitch this to somebody? And I'm like, absolutely not. Go for it. About 2 weeks later, I get a call from my former boss who said, I love this idea. We're going to film a pilot for it. Do you want to be a part of it? And I'm like, absolutely.
When you say farmer boss, where was this from? Where?
So I worked for a production company in Columbus, Georgia called Sub 7 for 5 years.
Gotcha.
Who back then was doing, when I left, we were doing 7 TV shows and a web series. We were enormous. But anyway, so I go down, they asked me to come help shoot that, which I was not qualified to do at the time. I go down, I meet Jeff Foxworthy, I go shoot with these guys, and I see like what professionals look like. Oh man, I was lost as last year's Easter egg. I had no idea what I was doing. And I learned that very quickly. But I was like, okay, I have got so much learning to do. And essentially that pilot ended up turning into the web show with Jeff Foxworthy, which would have been in 2012 when it started. And my old boss called me and said, hey, we're busting out the seams here at our production. Would you be interested in coming to work for me? And I'm like, dude, I'll quit my job.
So did you get paid anything for the idea?
No. I know. Which by the time the show actually developed and came out, it was very different from my idea. So it really wasn't even my idea. But essentially, my idea is what sparked doing a series with Jeff Foxworthy. But anyway, he asked me if I'd come work for him. I was like, dude, I'll quit my job today. I'll be there. But that required me and my fairly new wife to move to Columbus, Georgia, which is about 3 hours away from here in Northeast Georgia, which I'd never, other than my freshman year of college, I'd never been away from home. And I was, nervous about it, but like, this was my dream job. I would have done this job for free. So I moved down there and I was, I learned more in 3 months of working with professionals than I did in almost 3 years doing it on my own. And
I think that's that point right there. I've got older kids, right? Either out of college, in college. And the one piece of advice I've given to every one of them is, once you know what you want to do, find somebody that does it really well. And even if you have to work for nothing, figure out a way to get in their back pocket and just be with them for a year and learn. Because that will catapult you to the faster than anything. Is just shorten the learning curve and stop. Don't worry about how much money you make. Get the experience with somebody who knows what they're doing. Yeah.
If you've got to wait tables at night to do it, that's worth it. Because the thing is, if I would have been smart and figured out hey, these are the people I look up to, the people I ended up working for, and this is the job that I want to do, which at the time I didn't know how to do it or what to do. But if you want to learn what we do for a living and this is what you want to do, you come sit in this office when we're here for 3 to 6 months. You can do it. If you genuinely want to learn, if this is genuinely what you want to do, you pay attention, ask questions, and you could absolutely learn it.
So for people that are interested, do you take interns? Like, do you do internships with people so that we might have the opportunity to do that, or no?
We can, and we have. It's tough for us during the season because we're in and out so much. But like during the spring and summer when we're here a lot, it's very doable. The fall's a lot harder, but yeah, I mean, you spend 3 to 6 months with someone in the field that you want to learn from, and especially if you're willing to do it if you're willing to do it for free for 3 to 6 months, I guarantee you, once you're out of that 3 to 6 months and you add value at that place, you'll probably have a job waiting for you at that place after that. At least that would be the case here. The biggest thing for us though, to add to that is the person. I value experience and personality over any education. Like, I think the only guy here that actually has a degree is Clay. I think everybody else here doesn't. None of us were formally trained to do this. Not a single one of us. We were all either self-taught or learned through Hard Knocks or from YouTube University.
Well, think about it. How if you were just to take, I mean, that's a great point. If you were to take somebody and say, okay, go to college for 4 years and do film study, or spend 4 years with somebody that's making films, which one of those people do you think is going to be more skilled at the end of those 4 years? It's going to be like not even close.
For the creative industry, I'm not the guy to talk to about going to college, because I'll tell you, absolutely don't. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. Clay ended up going for, I think he actually has like a film something degree, but he got it in like a quarter of the time because he just passed all the tests for the classes because he had already been freelancing for people. And he's like, in like my junior level camera class, they're teaching us how to put the battery in the camera. He's like, what the hell is going on here? And he's like, this is a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
But the experience of being in the field, is so much more valuable. And you can tell guys that want to do it. Like, we had an intern this past summer. He's actually now a senior in high school. His name's Sam. And he just took like an audio video class his freshman year of high school. And he's like, man, this is fun. And now he just got on to the film program at Ole Miss because he likes to do sports. So he's going to be doing, those really big hype pieces for sports, like for football. That's what he wants to do. So he made a way to make that happen. If you want to do it bad enough, you can do it. And content is king right now. So if it's something you want to do, find somebody around you that does it and volunteer.
So that's a great segue into what I was going to ask you next. That there's, like you said, content is king. There's a ton of people that this isn't necessarily what they want to do for a living, but they do want to film their own stuff. They want to create content for their own YouTube channels, whatever, their social media. What are some really, if somebody's like, hey, I want to start filming stuff for myself, but I have no idea where to start, right? What would be like the starter kit for that person, both in terms of, hey, this is what you need minimum to start with. You don't have to buy A, B, and C, but you do need these 3 things. And then from a skill set, or just in terms of practical application, where should that person start in terms of just trying to figure it out and how to do it well?
Well, the first thing in terms of like just basic gear you're going to need, first question I always ask, because I get that question all the time, like, hey, what camera should I buy? Well, the camera is a major part of it, but it's also just one piece to that puzzle. To do things well, you need a good camera, media, support, lights. You need all of it. And they're all just as important as the next. And the biggest thing I ask, the first question I ask is like, what's your budget? Most people are like, I got $1,000 to spend. It's like, well, you need to save some more money because you're not going to get a good setup for $1,000. And if your budget is $2,500, you need to plan on double your budget to get the right support, the right lights, the right stuff to be able to do it correctly. For $3,000 to $5,000-ish, which I know is a lot of money, that's going to get you a setup that you can be successful. The next question I want to ask is, what's your goal? Is your goal to be a social media influencer? Is it to show your buddies on the weekends your hunts? Is it to make home videos? Is it to start a YouTube channel? Because those things all require different things and different levels of commitment. To be successful on YouTube, you have to feed the beast. You've got to be able to put a video out at a minimum every 2 weeks, preferably every week. And they have to be long. They have to be over 20 minutes for the watch times and the ad reads. You've got to get a certain amount of followers, a certain amount of minutes watched before you can monetize. It's a whole job to do it correctly. If you just want to make home videos for your buddies, throw a GoPro on your head and let it eat. I mean, that's easy. Or if you want to do it at our level, better get ready to spend some money. Because
what about the guy who wants to film his hunts, do that kind of stuff, not necessarily, looking to do a bunch of stuff in a studio, but, wants to film his hunts, those kinds of things. Cause that's a little bit of a different setup, right?
If you just want to film your hunt, and you just want it to be able to watch back, I mean, get you a GoPro or an Osmo. I'm not a GoPro fan. Get an Osmo DJI Action camera or a 360 camera in 4 or 6K and do that. That's the easiest, by far, the easiest way to do it. I don't recommend that to anybody because I cannot stand watching those hunts. It drives me insane to watch a deer that's about this big get shot. You can't tell anything about it. But if you just want to be able to relive your hunt, then that's the way to do it.
But if you want it to, like you said, if you want it to be something that you can actually see, that's user friendly, but still, you can zoom in and out, you can get good pictures of the hunt. I'm watching sometimes when I'll watch some of these, where they'll film the guy filming who's doing his own thing. Like he's got some kind of an arm set up and then there's a camera with that he's moving around like that. I don't do any of that stuff myself, but for the person who does, what does that setup look like?
That's that $2,500 to $5,000 setup. It is to get a good, we call them just like handy cams, like a 4K handy cam that's, kind of does everything in automatic. We don't shoot anything in auto, but you can shoot things in auto if you're just doing that. But, I don't know the model numbers of those cameras because we don't use any of them.
Yeah.
So I couldn't even tell you where to start or what the names of the cameras that I have to go and research it. But those, I'll go ahead and tell you, we do not do any self filming. That's probably the number one question we get asked, and we don't do it because it's friggin' impossible. It's so hard to do it well. And if we can't do it well, we're not going to do it. Yeah. Everything we film is 2 people, a cameraman and a hunter. So I'm not the guy to ask about self filming because I've done it about twice and I said, the hell with this. This is impossible. I'm not doing it again.
I've thought the same thing. Like I like there's been a couple of times where it's briefly crossed my mind and I'm like, I have a hard enough time just hunting and, doing what I need to do hunting, let alone trying to film something and try to get all that part figured out.
And to be good at it, man. Yeah. I know a handful of guys that are good at it and it's tough. The setup is more important than anything, like having the right tree, the right cover, and being a really daggum good hunter. That's what it's going to take. And believe it or not, I can teach you how to run a camera quicker than I can teach you how to hunt. And that's been the really hard thing for us. You can find lots of people know how to run a camera, but guys know how to hunt. Not a lot of those. And you can find plenty of guys know how to hunt, but have no idea how to run a camera. It's really hard.
Are the guys that you're looking for to work for you? Are you looking for guys that know how to hunt?
Preferably, yeah.
Okay. And so if they're talk to me a little bit about that, because I just figured, they're with the hunter. I mean, obviously they'd need to know, the important things about noise and some of those things, but
but they don't. If they don't know how to hunt, they don't know those things.
I got you. So basically you're just saying if they know how to hunt, then you don't have to worry about all the stuff that you'd have to worry about with them blowing the hunt with. Yeah. I got you. That makes sense. It is much easier to find a guy that hunts and teach him how to run a camera than find a guy that knows how to run a camera and teach him how to hunt. It's very, in my experience, very, very much skewed towards hunter first, camera guy second. And I've seen it go the other way. But you think about
think about, you said you started hunting recently. Well, I started hunting when I was 18 months old with my dad. That's all I did for nearly 20 years. And then, it was really only whitetails and turkeys. But those two things translate a lot to most everything else you hunt, with the exception of like spot and stalk, which, we do a little bit of, we don't do a ton of, but knowing how to play the wind, knowing how to move, knowing how to read sign, knowing how to be still, knowing how to use cover, knowing how to use all these things, how to read terrain, how to, what is a pinch point, what's not, all the things that you need to know hunting, you need to know as a hunting producer as well. Because when you add 2 people to a tree, 2 people to a blind, 2 people to a stalk, it doubles your chances of messing it up. It doubles your chances of being seen, blown, whatever. It works to your disadvantage more than it works to your advantage. So, and having a guy that doesn't know bear crap from apple butter in terms of hunting, that's what's really, really tough when you go out. And I could tell you some horror stories from guys that have found quote unquote film students and try to take them on hunts. It never works. It's a terrible experience. So I advise you, if you know how to hunt and you're confident behind a bow or a gun, I can teach a monkey how to run a camera if you pay attention. Whether you have a creative bug or not, that's yet to be seen. But if you just want to film like basic hunts, anybody can do that. I mean, I'm a redneck from Georgia and I can do it. It's not rocket science. But
you do a hell of a job with it, though. You've got it figured out. Like, you've got a good eye.
I've got a great team. I don't film and edit near as much as I used to. The rest of these guys in these office, which Clay's the only one here, the rest of these guys in this office are the ones that do the really, really pretty stuff. I'm the 10,000 foot view guy now. Mm-hmm. And I try and implement the plan, and I hand them the plan and let them run with it for the most part now. At least that's where we're trying to get. I still film. I don't know how many days I do now. I try and do as many as I can. But like I said, with 3 kids, man, it makes it really tough. But yeah, it's the experience level of being behind the camera and knowing what you can get away with and what you can't. And that's why another thing I like getting guys from the Southeast too. Which this is going to make a lot of guys mad. But if you can be successful hunting whitetails or turkeys in the Southeast, you can kill anything anywhere. Because there's nothing harder to hunt than a southeastern turkey or a southeastern whitetail.
Talk about that a little bit, because I live in South Carolina. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I've just started recently. Joe Miles is a friend of mine. That's one of the same things he says to me is like, hey, he's like, I know you're banging your head against the wall and I know it's hard as hell, but if you can figure out how to hunt whitetail in South Carolina, you'll be successful anywhere you go. For people who don't live in the Southeast, explain that some.
Well, it's very simple to explain. All you have to do is look at a population map, and 80% of the people live on the east side of the Mississippi River. I think 80% of those live in the Southeast, because I drive most everywhere, and the only time I ever hit traffic is when I'm in the Southeast. The Southeast is hunted harder by more people on smaller tracts of land than anywhere. So the pressure is higher. The deer hit the ground out of the womb looking up into trees. And it's one of those things to where there's more people, there's less large tracts of land, and there's less like stereotypical what you would call edges and pinch points, because everything is timber. So you're hunting big timber and small fields and small edges. Whereas you go to like a Missouri and Iowa, Kansas, where, it's 30% timber, 70% field, or 50% timber, 50% field, with hard edges, which deer love edges, major pinch points. Deer love pinch points. Deer love, those things you can look on a map if you know what you're looking at, and you can say, I need to put a stand right there. You can't do that in the Southeast without getting out and walking. Like, we've got 50-something thousand acres of public land within 45 minutes of right here. There's virtually no chance you're getting me to hunt that, because there is no place harder to hunt than that. You go and you kill a big deer in that, 1 or 2 things happen. You worked your butt off, or you got really freaking lucky. That's the only 2 ways of doing it. There's so many people. Everybody hunts. everybody. I mean, look at where all the biggest deer come from. They're coming from 1 acre tracts in, the perimeter of Atlanta right now. That's how few places we have to hunt. Is everybody is now going to the suburbs because that's where all the deer have been pushed. That's where they figure out how to live, and guys are gaining permission. And it's a fairly inexpensive way to hunt around here because you can't afford a lease, you can't afford to buy property because property is astronomical. And if there's a large tract of land, there's at least one person hunting it.
Yeah, I lease about 110 acres. That's like a piece of a 1,600 acre property, but there's there's 6 or 7 other people, hunting that, not that, 100 acres, but we're all like butting up against each other. Right. Yeah. And in South Carolina, at least in the hunting unit that I'm in, there's no bow season. August 15th, the season starts, and they're getting shot at on day 1 all the way through January the 2nd. So
South Carolina is the Wild West, bro.
So like as a bow hunter, like I don't ever get a chance, where they're not getting shot at.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Yeah.
So I started this with asking you 3 things that you've seen, just from being around a lot of really good hunters that separate the good from the bad. What are 3 things that you see or have seen that are definite, these are the things that if you do will really put you in a bad position. Whether it's, somebody that I imagine most of the people you're with are really good. So it's probably more about, hey, don't do this, them kind of giving advice. But, what are 3 don'ts that if someone's struggling, if someone's, a newer hunter, trying to shorten the learning curve, things to avoid?
I would say one of the things that comes to mind is to slow down, to take your time, and is which I guess that depends. It depends on the kind of hunter. If you're whitetail hunting, especially when you have a deer coming in, really having that process to slow yourself down, especially bow hunting, to be able to talk yourself through your shot process to make sure you're not. I can't tell you how many times I've heard guys tell me a story and they had a deer coming in, they missed that. They don't remember drawing. They don't remember looking through their peep. An arrow goes off and they missed and they don't know why. They blacked out because they didn't have that process. They get such buck fever that they can't walk themselves through a simple 2, 3, 4, 5-step process to make sure they make a good shot. Jeff Foxwell used to say, I would tell myself, this is not going to happen. He's not going to come in. This is not going to happen. He's like, I tell myself it's not going to happen the whole time, so I don't get jacked out of my mind until the second I need to make a good shot. And then I fall apart after the shot. That's where I try and be. I try and be as cool as a cucumber until after the shot, and then I can fall apart after that. But hey, I can't tell you how many times I've been in a tree with guys, have a deer coming in, and I can hear their heart beating through their microphone in my ears, and I have to be a cheerleader and a coach to them. And I'm like, hey, dude, take a deep breath, breathe, pick a spot, anchor, make a good shot. Like having to try and slow them down because I can't be freaking out behind the camera and that guy be freaking out because then what was the point of going, and in recent memory, I've only had 1 deer get me jacked up behind the camera. But other than that, like when I'm filming, man, I'm usually cool as a cucumber because I've done it so many times now. But it's one of those things to where, and I also think the camera kind of separates you sometimes. Like you're watching it through a viewfinder. At least you should be if you're a good producer, instead of like looking actually, at a turkey coming in, you're actually watching in a viewfinder. And I think that kind of separates you because I've got to be a producer first. Like I got to understand the hunting side, but I've got to be able to produce what's happening as well.
Right.
But I think having that plan, having that process to be able to make a successful shot. But the other side of that is like turkey hunting and elk hunting. I'm super aggressive when I hunt those because I feel like you have to be. It's a numbers game. Like when you get turkeys to gobble and elk to bugle, like they don't gobble all day and they don't bugle all day. Like you've got to make a move. You can't be indecisive and take your time. Like you've got to make tracks and get there. You've got to call. You've got to cut them off. You've got to do those things. You can't be indecisive. And that, I guess that would be the second thing would be you got to be able to make a decision and go with your gut and go with your instincts and be able to get there and do that. And I guess the last thing would be, you said the don't do's. So that would be don't be indecisive, I guess. So that's correct. So another don't do. I can't say that one.
Yeah, you can. It's a podcast.
We just had
We're not on TV.
We had a terrible experience with an outfitter in Ohio a couple years ago. It's a kind of a running joke. This would have been 2015, 2016. So do your research. Don't go hunt with somebody just because they send you trail cam pictures of deer. That doesn't mean anything. There's some really dang good liars out there. Do your research. Don't go hunting somewhere or do something without going through someone you trust. Like, I don't buy anything or go hunting anywhere until I get verified information from somebody that I know and trust that's been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Otherwise, you spend a lot of time and money wasted. We've done it on multiple occasions. And I have had it work the other way. My first aoudad I killed in West Texas, I bought the hunt off eBay for $1,500, sight unseen, showed up and killed an aoudad within the first 3 hours I was there. I don't know if that happens very often. I got really lucky, and now I've been back in 3 different times, and we've killed aoudad every time we went. But that's a very rare case. You got to find people you trust, and you've got to trust but verify, I guess would be a really good way to put that.
I think that's a really good piece of advice, especially with social media. People can make things look really, really good on social. I ended up going, I almost went with a guide elk hunting because I've got a guy who I know really well who I was going to go with in New Mexico, but I didn't draw a tag. And so I almost went with somebody on an over-the-counter tag in Colorado, and something about it just didn't feel completely right. And so then I started calling around and just trying to find somebody that, and no one knew him, but somebody knew somebody that did know them. And long story short, it was basically like they were going to put you, in a stand over water the entire time. And then when you actually looked at the quality of the bulls they were shooting, it wasn't very good. And it really wasn't, I guess if all you wanted to do was kill something, it would have been fine. Mm-hmm. But if you were looking to get out there, and actually experience what, Western hunting is like, and not just go basically hunt elk like you hunt whitetail, it wouldn't have been very good. So,
well, I think that's another piece of advice too, just to throw that out there and I had this conversation with some guys the other night, is I got into hunting not because I wanted to kill stuff. I got into hunting because I enjoyed the time I got to spend with my dad and my brother and my buddies. I think killing something's the cherry on top. And if you go every time, especially for new guys, I know experienced guys understand this, but for new hunters, if you expect every time you leave the house, whether that's out of state or, close to where you're hunting, to shoot something or have an encounter with something every time you go, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. You've got to understand that there's going to be days you don't see anything. There's going to be days that nothing goes right. There's going to be days the wind says it's north and you get in this tree and it's not north. That's hunting. And if you've got to understand that if you don't value the time with the people, the time in the tree, the time to sit in the quiet, to be by yourself, to think, if you don't value those things above shooting something, then you don't need to hunt.
Yeah. And I think that's a great message, right? So for somebody like me who's, built businesses and done a lot of different things where it's kind of like you can impose your will a little bit. Yeah. Hunting has been extremely humbling, but I think it's also been really, really good for me because it's made me recenter a lot more on process and the experience of doing something versus the outcome of it. And I have to constantly remind myself of that all the time because the reality of it is in hunting, the outcome is going to be, depending on how you define it, you're not going to harvest something the majority of the time you're out there, and you're putting in tons and tons of work. And if you always just look at it as, and this is the battle that I always fight, right? But if you're always looking at it as trying to get somewhere, then you're always going to be disappointed. But if you can look at it more as an experience and a journey, and like you said, just enjoy being there, enjoy the gift, that you're being given. Like I call it my God place, but a place where you can really connect on whatever level that's important to you. Yeah. And then the harvest is, is a gift that you're being given.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Listen, man, I really appreciate you jumping on. It's 7 a.m, so it was a big ask, but it was like the only thing that fit both of our schedules. But thank you very much. This has been great. For people that want to find your stuff, can you just real quick where you are on social, what your website is, all that stuff?
Yeah. You can find everything through our social media. It's at Cope Creative. So Cope, COPE Creative, all one word. Some company in Colorado or Canada had Copeland Creative. So ours is at Cope Creative, but you can find website and everything else there.
Okay, great. Yeah, if you get a chance, obviously anyone that's watching this, take a look. Caleb's stuff is great. They produce really, really great content. It was a pleasure getting a chance to talk to you. I hope everyone takes a lot away from this. If people are looking to get into filming themselves or into this business, I think you're a great one to watch and just to pay attention to, and hopefully run into you again at Winter Strong this weekend.
Yeah, I'll be there best I can. I hope so anyway.
Yeah, I hope you're there too, man. I appreciate your time. This section of the podcast is brought to you by Osseo Gear. With its one-of-a-kind Raptor camo pattern, Osseo blends seamlessly into the whitetail woods. Osseo's features and technology are designed to fit the unique needs of the bow hunter. With a lifetime warranty, Osseo is designed by bow hunters for bow hunters. Use the code DONOTGO20 to get 20% off any order from the Osseo Gear website. Visit them at OsseoGear.com. Elevate your game with Osseo.